Welcome to Cheaters Theater. Over 95% of you watch without subscribing. Please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. And tell us, where are you watching from? We'd love to know. Let's begin. I never thought I'd be the kind of man who'd dismantle his own wife's life piece by piece. But when you catch someone plotting to destroy you while they're sleeping next to you every night, you learn pretty quickly that mercy is just another word for stupid. The night she humiliated me in front of 8 people at an overpriced restaurant in Austin was supposed to be my breaking point. Except she didn't know I'd already broken her world 3 weeks earlier while she was singing in the shower. The steak at Copper Hill that Saturday evening cost $52 and tasted like expensive cardboard. But I kept chewing, kept my face neutral, kept playing the role of the oblivious husband while my wife sharpened her knives in front of our friends. Vanessa was on her 3rd martini, and with each sip, her voice got louder, her gestures wider, her eyes brighter with that particular gleam she got when she was about to say something cruel disguised as humor. I recognized that look because I'd seen it 100 times before, usually directed at waitstaff or people she considered beneath her, but never at me in public. Tonight was different. Tonight she wanted blood. The table was set for 8. Dim lighting making everyone look like they were auditioning for a noir film. And the portions were so small you'd need a magnifying glass to find your protein. This was one of those places where you paid for atmosphere and social media photos, not actual food. My friend sat at one end, her corporate crowd at the other, and Claire Dawson sat right across from Vanessa, nursing a glass of white wine and watching everything with those calculating eyes that missed nothing. Claire had been Vanessa's best friend since college, or so Vanessa claimed. Though I'd noticed over the years that Vanessa didn't really have friends so much as she had audience members. I was cutting into my steak methodically, the way I did everything, when Vanessa started in on me. She'd been building to it all night. Little jabs here and there, testing the waters, a comment about how I wore the same style of shirt every day, a joke about how I fell asleep during some movie she wanted to watch. Standard stuff that I let roll off because I'd learned early that arguing with Vanessa in public was like wrestling a pig in mud. You both got dirty, but the pig enjoyed it. But then she went for the throat. You know what the problem with successful men is? Vanessa announced, her voice carrying over the ambient jazz music and the murmur of other diners. They put all their energy into their work, and by the time they get home, there's nothing left for their wives. She paused for effect, making sure everyone was listening. Nathan here is a perfect example. Runs a tight ship at his logistics company. Very respected, very focused. But in private, she laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Let's just say he's not very imaginative. The table went quiet. Not the comfortable silence of people enjoying a meal, but that thick, suffocating quiet that happens when someone crosses a line and nobody knows how to respond. I saw Adrian, one of my business associates, stared down at his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. Vanessa's work friend, Melissa, did that thing where she smiled, but her eyes screamed discomfort. Even the waiter, who'd been approaching with a wine bottle, did a quick pivot and retreated to the safety of the kitchen. I didn't react. I kept my eyes on my plate, speared another piece of meat, chewed slowly. This was important. Vanessa was performing, and performers need reactions. They need gasps or laughs or shocked faces. They need to know they've landed the punch. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction because I knew something she didn't know. Something that made her petty cruelty feel like a child throwing sand at a tank. 3 weeks earlier, I'd read every message on her phone. I knew about Trevor Brooks, her department head, the guy with the slicked back hair and the expensive suits that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. I knew about their plan to drain my business accounts, to saddle me with debt, to leave me broke and broken while they rode off into some beach sunset in Cabo San Lucas. I knew she'd been planning this for 5 months methodically, the way a surgeon plans an operation or a general plans a campaign. She thought she was the smart one, the strategic one, the one who was always 3 steps ahead. She was wrong. The thing about being underestimated is that people tell you their plans. They don't hide their phones as carefully. They don't check over their shoulders. Vanessa thought I was boring, predictable, so focused on shipping routes and warehouse management that I couldn't possibly understand the subtle art of deception. She forgot that running a logistics company in Texas means dealing with every kind of hustler, con artist, and slick operator the Lone Star State can produce. You don't survive in that world without learning to spot a setup from a mile away. Claire Dawson dropped her fork. The sound of metal hitting porcelain cracked through the tension like a gunshot in a library. Every head turned toward her. Claire wasn't the dramatic type. She was a lawyer, corporate law, the kind of woman who wore gray pantsuits and kept her emotions locked down tighter than a bank vault. She worked methodical problems and spoke in complete sentences. She didn't do impulsive, but now she was looking at Vanessa with an expression ID never seen before. Something cold and final, like a door closing. "That's interesting," Claire said, her voice carrying that particular tone lawyers use when they're about to dismantle someone's argument. "Because that's not what you told me 4 months ago, Vanessa. You told me the problem wasn't Nathan's lack of imagination. You told me the problem was that Nathan had standards, and those standards didn't include tolerating a wife who was sleeping around the office like a corporate welcome mat." The table exploded into chaos. Not loud chaos, not people yelling or standing up or throwing drinks. Worse, the quiet kind of chaos where everyone starts talking at once in hushed, urgent whispers. Where phones suddenly become very interesting. Where people remember they have early mornings and sick relatives and any excuse to evacuate the blast zone. Vanessa's face went through several colors in rapid succession, red to white to a sort of grayish purple that would have been funny if the situation wasn't so perfectly timed. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. For maybe the first time in her life, Vanessa Holloway had no comeback, no clever quip, no way to spin the narrative back in her favor. I set down my knife and fork with deliberate care, picked up my water glass, took a long, slow drink while maintaining eye contact with my wife. In that moment, I saw the exact second when she understood, when the performance dropped and real fear crept in, when she realized that she wasn't controlling the situation, that maybe she'd never been controlling it, that the mouse she'd been toying with was actually a trap that had been waiting for her to step inside. Claire wasn't done. She turned to me, and her expression softened slightly, though her voice stayed level and professional. "I apologize for not coming to you sooner, Nathan. I thought about it many times, but I wanted to make sure I had everything documented before I said anything. I've learned that accusations without evidence just make you look bitter." "Evidence?" Vanessa's voice came out strangled, desperate. "What evidence? Claire? What are you talking about?" Claire reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and placed it on the table between us. The screen showed a text message thread. I couldn't read it from where I sat, but I didn't need to. I'd seen those messages already, copied them from Vanessa's phone 3 weeks ago when she'd left it charging while she took one of her long singing showers. "The evidence," Claire said calmly, "of you using me as an alibi for your affair with Trevor Brooks. The evidence of you planning to commit fraud against your husband. The evidence of you telling me, and I quote, that you married Nathan for his money and his connections, and now that you'd squeezed what you could from him, it was time to trade up." She paused. "Let that sink in. You know what the funny thing is, Vanessa? You were my best friend for 14 years, and you were so casual about destroying someone's life that you didn't even think to use a secure messaging app." The waiter appeared then, either brave or oblivious to the fallout happening at table 12. He set down dessert menus with shaking hands and disappeared before anyone could order. Nobody was looking at the menus. Everyone was looking at Vanessa, who'd gone completely still. Her earlier confidence evaporated like water on hot asphalt. I reached under my chair and pulled out a leather portfolio ID placed there when we first sat down. Everyone had assumed it was a gift. Maybe some romantic gesture for our anniversary. It wasn't. I placed it on the table in front of Vanessa, right next to her half-empty martini glass. "Open it," I said, the first words I'd spoken since we sat down to eat. Vanessa's hands trembled as she unzipped the portfolio. Inside was a stack of documents, divorce papers filled out and ready to file, printouts of her text messages with Trevor, bank statements showing her attempts to access my business accounts, a letter from my attorney outlining the terms of our prenuptial agreement, specifically the infidelity clause that she'd apparently forgotten existed, and at the very bottom, a notice that her corporate credit card had been canceled as of that afternoon. See, the thing about having a wife who works in marketing is that she has access to a lot of corporate resources, company credit cards, expense accounts, access to private client information. Vanessa had been using all of that to fund her little adventure with Trevor. Fancy hotels, expensive dinners, weekend trips to places she told me were business conferences. ID made a few phone calls to her company's CFO, an old college buddy of mine who played golf at the same club. Had a very interesting conversation about potential misuse of corporate resources. Provided some dates and receipts. Expressed my concern as a worried husband had noticed some irregularities. The CFO had been very grateful for the heads up, very thorough in his investigation, very decisive in his actions. "You're fired," I told Vanessa, though I was really just confirming what she'd probably already guessed. So is Trevor. By now, building security has probably boxed up his desk and escorted him out. Your desk, too, though you weren't there to see it. They'll mail your personal items to your mother's house in Plano, seeing as you won't have access to our house anymore. Our house. Vanessa's voice came out as a whisper. What do you mean I won't have access? The house belongs to a trust established before we married. You're a resident by my permission, and that permission is revoked as of tonight. Locks have been changed. Security system updated. Your belongings are in storage, and you'll receive the location once you provide a forwarding address. I stood up, pulled my wallet out, and placed a $100 bill on the table. This covers my meal. I'm sure everyone else can figure out their own arrangements. I looked around the table at the stunned faces, saved Claire for last. She gave me the smallest nod, a gesture that said we'd talk later, that she understood what I'd done and why. Then I walked out of Copper Hill without looking back, though I heard the sharp crack of Vanessa's martini glass hitting the floor behind me. The parking lot was humid. Typical Texas evening, the kind of heat that doesn't care if the sun's down. I climbed into my truck, a sensible F-150 that Vanessa always complained about because it wasn't flashy enough for her image. Started the engine, sat there for a moment, letting the AC wash over me. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt calm, centered, like I just finished a complex project and all the pieces had fallen into place exactly as planned. 3 weeks earlier had been different. 3 weeks earlier, ID felt like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it stopped beating. That was the night I discovered the truth, and it had nearly destroyed me. But then training kicked in, the same training that had built my business from nothing into a company that handled logistics for half the major retailers in Texas. You don't panic. You don't make emotional decisions. You gather information, form a strategy, and execute with precision. It had been a Wednesday. Vanessa had gotten home late from work, claimed she had dinner with clients, smelled like expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. She'd gone straight to the shower, left her phone on the charger in the living room. I'd been sitting there watching some documentary about World War II, learning about deception operations and military strategy, when her phone lit up with a message preview. Trevor, when we take his assets, we'll finally be free. Cabo is waiting, baby. ID stared at that message for what felt like an hour, but it was probably 30 seconds. The shower was still running. Steam was creeping out from under the bathroom door. I could hear Vanessa singing, happy, carefree, probably imagining her new life without me. My first instinct was to march in there, to confront her, to smash the phone against the wall and demand answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the tone of that message, the casual confidence of it. These people weren't amateurs. They had a plan. I needed a better plan. Her phone passcode was easy. It was always easy because Vanessa thought I was too boring and trustworthy to ever check. She used her birthday, 8 digits, no creativity. Her text messages with Trevor went back 8 months. At first, it was just flirting. The kind of stuff that could be explained away as harmless banter between coworkers. Then it got physical. Then it got financial. Then it became a blueprint for destroying my life. They'd been thorough. I'd give them that. Trevor had a friend who worked at a bank, someone who could help them access my accounts if they had the right information. Vanessa had been slowly collecting that information, account numbers, passwords, security question answers. She'd even gone through my files in my home office, photographed documents, sent them to Trevor. They knew exactly how much I was worth, where every dollar was kept, how to get at it. Their plan was simple and would have worked if I'd been the trusting idiot they thought I was. Vanessa would file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. During the proceedings, before any assets were frozen, Trevor's banking friend would help them transfer money out of my business accounts into offshore holdings. They'd make it look like bad investments or embezzlement by an employee, anything to distance Vanessa from the theft. By the time the dust settled, I'd be broke, possibly under criminal investigation, and they'd be living in some beach house under fake names. ID sat in that living room reading every word of their conspiracy, listening to my wife sing in the shower, and felt something inside me go cold and hard like steel. This wasn't just infidelity. This wasn't just about sex or feeling neglected or growing apart. This was premeditated destruction. This was someone ID loved, trusted, built a life with, planning to ruin me completely. The shower turned off. ID cleared the phone, put it back exactly where Shed left it, and gone back to my documentary. When Vanessa came out in her robe, smelling like lavender and lies, ID smiled at her, asked about her day, listened to her make up details about a client dinner that never happened, went to bed next to her, and stared at the ceiling until sunrise. The next morning, ID started making calls. First to my lawyer, a guy named Samuel Keene, who'd handled my business contracts for years. Samuel was old school, the type who wore suspenders and kept a bottle of bourbon in his desk drawer and didn't believe in losing. ID driven to his office, told him everything, showed him screenshots ID taken of Vanessa's messages. "How angry are you?" Samuel had asked, leaning back in his leather chair. "I'm not angry," ID said. "I'm done." "Good." Samuel smiled. "Angry people make mistakes. Done people make plans." We'd spent the next week restructuring everything. My business assets went into an irrevocable trust, protected from any divorce proceedings. We updated my will, changed beneficiaries, created financial firewalls that would take Vanessa years and a team of lawyers to penetrate, if she could penetrate them at all. Samuel had connections at Vanessa's company, knew people on the board. He made discreet inquiries about workplace relationships, conflict of interest policies, misuse of corporate resources. Meanwhile, I'd gone home every night and played the perfect husband. Kissed Vanessa goodbye in the mornings. Asked about her day. Slept with her twice that week, which she seemed surprised by, but pleased about, never suspecting that every touch was a goodbye. Every conversation was me memorializing what she destroyed. Claire had found me on the third day of my investigation. I'd been sitting in my truck outside my warehouse reviewing documents on my laptop when someone knocked on my window. ID expected a homeless person or maybe one of my employees with a question. Instead, it was Claire Dawson looking nervous in a way ID never seen her look before. "We need to talk," Shed said, "about Vanessa." We'd gone to a coffee shop, one of those chain places where nobody knows your name and nobody cares why you're there. Claire had ordered black coffee and sat across from me with her hands wrapped around the cup like she was trying to draw warmth from it, even though it was 88 degrees outside. "I should have come to you months ago," Claire had started, but I kept thinking maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was misinterpreting things. Then I realized I wasn't wrong. Vanessa had been using her. She told me everything. How Vanessa had been asking her to lie about girls' nights out that never happened. How Vanessa had left documents at Claire's apartment for safekeeping. Documents that Claire eventually looked at and realized were photocopies of my financial records. How Vanessa had even tried to get Claire to invest in Trevor's made-up cryptocurrency scheme, a scheme designed to launder money from my accounts. "She told me you were abusive," Claire had said quietly. "She said you controlled all the money, that you monitored her every move, that you'd ruined her career opportunities because you were jealous of her success. She said she was afraid of you." And I believed her, Nathan, for a while. I actually believed her. "What changed your mind?" ID asked. "I saw you two at the grocery store last month. You didn't know I was there. I was in the next aisle over, and I heard you talking. You were asking her if she wanted to go to some concert, some band she liked. You were being so patient with her while she complained about everything. The parking, the prices, the people. You weren't controlling. You weren't scary. You were just a guy trying to make his difficult wife happy. And that's when I realized Vanessa was lying about you the same way she lies about everything else." Claire had pushed a folder across the table to me. Inside were copies of documents Vanessa had left at her place. Financial statements, my tax returns, business contracts, everything someone would need to understand my complete financial picture. "I made copies before I gave them back to her," Claire had said. "I told myself it was just in case, but I think I knew even then that she was planning something bad. I'm sorry I didn't come forward sooner." "Don't be," I told her. "You're here now. That's what matters." We talked for 3 hours in that coffee shop. Claire had given me details I didn't have, filled in gaps in the timeline. Shed also told me about Vanessa's habit of destroying people who got in her way. How Shed ruined another woman's reputation at work by spreading rumors about an affair that never happened. how Shed sabotaged her own sister's business opportunity because she couldn't stand the competition. Vanessa wasn't just unfaithful, she was fundamentally cruel. What are you going to do? Claire had asked as we walked back to the parking lot. What needs to be done, ID said. Claire had nodded. If you need testimony, documentation, anything, call me. Vanessa burned our friendship to ashes. I'm not covering for her anymore. That conversation had been the final piece. With Claire's testimony and documents, Samuel assured me we had enough to not only win the divorce, but potentially pursue criminal charges if Vanessa and Trevor followed through with their theft plans. But I wanted something more than legal victory. I wanted Vanessa to experience the same humiliation, the same betrayal, the same complete loss of control that Shed been planning for me. Hence the anniversary dinner. Hence the public venue. Hence inviting Claire and watching Vanessa's house of cards collapse in front of everyone Shed wanted to impress. The day after the restaurant incident, I'd been in my office when Samuel called. Trevor Brooks tried to access his office this morning. Security denied him entry. His supervisor escorted him out with a box of personal items. Vanessa received the same treatment an hour later. Corporate released a statement about investigating potential violations of ethics policies. Any blowback on us? ID asked. None. You were the wronged husband who noticed irregularities and reported them. You're a hero. They're the ones who got caught before they could do real damage. And the police? The company's filing charges for misuse of corporate resources and attempted fraud. Whether Vanessa and Trevor get charged criminally depends on how deep the investigation goes, but their careers in Austin are finished. Nobody's going to touch them with a 12-foot pole. ID thanked Samuel and hung up. Sat there in my office looking out at the warehouse floor where forklifts moved pallets and workers scanned inventory. This was mine. ID built it from nothing. Worked 15-hour days in the beginning, slept on a cot in the corner until I could afford an apartment. Vanessa had come along when I was already successful, had enjoyed the fruits of my labor, and then decided it would be easier to steal it than to appreciate it. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Nathan. It was Trevor's voice, tight with stress. We need to talk. No, I said we don't. Listen, man. This is just a misunderstanding. Vanessa and we were just friends. The company made a mistake. If you just talk to them, explain that you misinterpreted some messages. I interpreted them perfectly. I cut him off. You were sleeping with my wife and planning to rob me. Those aren't things that get misinterpreted. Now you're fired, blacklisted, and probably going to be arrested. That's not a misunderstanding. That's consequences. You can't do this. Trevor's composure cracked. Do you know who I am? I have connections. They'll sue you for defamation, for interfering with my employment. Well, for what? I asked calmly. For showing your employer proof that you were having an affair with a subordinate and using company resources to plan a crime? Please, Trevor, sue me. I'd love to go through discovery where your text messages get read in open court. I'd love to hear your explanation for why you were researching how to access someone else's bank accounts. Sue away. Silence on the other end. Then, Vanessa said you were boring. She said you were too stupid to ever figure it out. She was wrong about a lot of things, I said, and ended the call. That evening, I'd gone home to my empty house. Vanessa's car was gone from the driveway. Her clothes were gone from the closet. All the little decorative touches Shed added over the years were gone. The house felt bigger, cleaner, like opening windows after a long winter. I'd made myself dinner, just some grilled chicken and vegetables. Nothing fancy. Sat on the back porch watching the sunset and drinking a beer. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Claire. Heard everything went according to plan. Her text read. Better than planned, I replied. Good. You deserve better than what she gave you. We both do, I typed back. For days later, Vanessa's mother called me. Mrs. Elaine Sutton, a brittle woman who'd never approved of me because I came from working-class roots instead of country club memberships. Shed always made it clear that her daughter had married beneath her station, that Vanessa could have done better. Nathan. Elaine's voice dripped with contempt. Vanessa is staying with me, and she's quite devastated. I think you should be ashamed of yourself, humiliating her like that in public. Mrs. Sutton, with all due respect, your daughter was planning to rob me and frame me for financial crimes. I'm not ashamed of protecting myself. That's ridiculous. Vanessa would never. I have the text messages, Mrs. Sutton. I have the documents. I have testimony from multiple witnesses. Your daughter is a thief and a liar, and the only thing I'm ashamed of is not seeing it sooner. Elaine had sputtered, started to say something else, but ID hung up. I was done explaining myself to people who refused to see the truth. Vanessa had made her choices. Now she could live with them. The divorce proceedings took 7 weeks. Samuel had streamlined everything, filed all the paperwork, presented all the evidence. Vanessa hired some budget attorneys she found online because the good lawyers in Austin knew about her case and wouldn't touch it. Her lawyer tried to argue that the prenuptial agreement was invalid, that ID coerced Vanessa into signing it, that the evidence against her was manufactured. The judge had looked at our documentation, looked at Vanessa's lawyer's arguments, and shut the whole thing down. Ms. Holloway, the judge had said to Vanessa, you signed a prenup that clearly states infidelity voids any claim to marital assets. You committed infidelity. You also conspired to commit fraud against your spouse. You're lucky, Mr. Holloway isn't pressing additional criminal charges. This court awards you nothing. Case closed. Vanessa had tried to speak, to object, to say something, but the judge had already moved on to the next case. We had walked out of that courthouse into bright Texas sunlight, and ID felt lighter than I had in years. Congratulations, Samuel had said, shaking my hand. You're officially a free man. What happens to Vanessa now? ID asked. Not your problem anymore. Samuel smiled. But if you are curious, I heard she's working at a diner near Fort Worth. Apparently, her mother got tired of supporting her after a few weeks and gave her an ultimatum. Get a job or get out. ID nodded, filed that information away as confirmation that the universe sometimes balances its own books. A month passed. My life settled into a new rhythm. Work during the day, gym in the evening, sleep in a bed that belonged only to me. I started dating again. Nothing serious, just reminding myself what it was like to have conversations with women who didn't need to tear me down to feel important. I reconnected with friends ID lost touch with during my marriage. Guys had tried to warn me about Vanessa, but whose warnings ID ignored. Claire and I met for coffee occasionally, not dates, just friendship. Two people who'd survived the same hurricane and understood what that meant. She told me about leaving her law firm and starting her own practice. I told her about expanding my business into Oklahoma. We talked about everything except Vanessa, who'd become irrelevant to both our lives. One evening, about 4 months after the divorce, I was at a business dinner at a steakhouse downtown. Not Copper Hill. I'd never go back to that place, but somewhere similar. Expensive, dark, portions too small. I was with a potential client discussing a contract when I saw her. Vanessa was our waitress. She looked different, thinner, older somehow, like the intervening months had aged her 6 years. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of the elaborate style she used to favor. No makeup, or at least not the heavy layers she used to wear. She was wearing the restaurant's standard uniform, black pants, and a white shirt with a name tag that said Vanessa O. She recognized me the same moment I recognized her. Her face went pale. Her hand trembled on the tray she was carrying, but to her credit, she didn't drop anything. She walked over to our table with her head held high, trying to maintain some dignity. Good evening, she said, her voice professionally neutral. He'll be your server tonight. Can I start you with drinks? My client, oblivious to the history, ordered a scotch. I looked at Vanessa for a long moment, watching her struggle to maintain her composure, then ordered a bourbon. Neat. She wrote it down and walked away without making eye contact. You okay? My client asked. You look like you've seen a ghost. Something like that, I said, and redirected the conversation back to business. Vanessa brought our drinks, took our orders, served our food, all with mechanical efficiency. She never addressed me directly, never acknowledged our past. When the check came, I added a 20% tip. Not out of generosity, but because I wasn't going to be petty. ID already won everything that mattered. As we stood to leave, Vanessa was clearing a nearby table. I walked past without saying anything, but I heard her voice, quiet and broken. I'm sorry. I stopped, turned to look at her. She was standing there with a tray full of dirty dishes, tears running down her face, looking nothing like the confident woman who'd mocked me in front of our friends. Sorry for which part? I asked. Cheating on me, planning to rob me, humiliating me in public, trying to destroy my life? I'm curious which specific thing you're apologizing for. All of it, she whispered. I was wrong about everything. About you, about Trevor, about what mattered. I threw away something real for something fake, and now I have nothing. I nodded slowly. Yeah, you did. Is there any chance? She started. No, I said firmly. There's no chance, no second opportunity, no redemption arc. You made your choices, and these are the consequences. Live with them. I walked out of that restaurant and didn't look back. My client was waiting by the car, and we drove to a bar to finalize our contract over drinks. The deal went through. Business was good. Life was good. Vanessa was someone else's problem now, preferably her own. 5 months later, I was at my warehouse when Claire called. You busy? She asked. Always, I said, but never too busy for you. What's up? I was thinking we should get dinner. Actually dinner, not work dinner. What do you think? I smiled. I think that sounds good. Where do you want to go? Anywhere but Copper Hill, she laughed. Deal. We met at a barbecue place on the east side. The kind of spot where the food was actually good and the portions could feed a family. We talked about work, about life, about the future. Somewhere during that conversation, I realized I was laughing more than I had in years. Claire had a dry sense of humor that matched mine, a quiet confidence that didn't need to dominate every conversation, an intelligence that didn't need to prove itself at other people's expense. You know what I like about you? I told her as we were leaving. You don't need to diminish me to feel important. That's a low bar, Claire said, but I'll take the compliment. It's not as low a bar as you'd think, I said. We started seeing each other regularly after that. Nothing rushed, no dramatic declarations, just two people building something real and honest. Claire never asked me to prove anything, never needed me to be anyone except who I was. After years of trying to satisfy someone impossible to satisfy, it was like breathing fresh air. A year after the divorce, I sold my house. Too many bad memories, too much baggage. I bought a new place on the outskirts of Austin. Bigger property, better view, room to expand. Claire helped me move in, brought pizza and beer, sat on the floor with me, surrounded by boxes, and laughed about how much stuff one person could accumulate. You happy? She asked me as we sat on the back porch watching the sun go down. Yeah, I said. I really am. Good. She smiled. You deserve to be. I heard from Samuel occasionally about Vanessa's situation. She had moved back to Austin after a year, got a job in marketing at a small firm that either didn't know or didn't care about her history. She was living in a studio apartment in a rough part of town, driving an 11-year-old Toyota, dating some guy who worked at a convenience store. Her social media was private now. No more posts about luxury vacations or expensive restaurants. She had learned humility the hard way. Trevor had left Texas entirely, moved to Arizona or Colorado, somewhere far from his ruined reputation. His LinkedIn profile said he was in real estate now, which was probably code for unemployed and desperate. As for me, my business continued to grow. I hired new people, expanded into additional states, built something I was genuinely proud of. I went to therapy for a while, worked through the betrayal and anger, learned to trust again. Claire and I got serious, moved in together, started talking about the future in concrete terms instead of vague possibilities. On the 3-year anniversary of that dinner at Copper Hill, Claire and I went back to that same restaurant. Different occasion, different energy, different outcome. We sat at the same table, ordered better wine than ID had last time, and toasted to new beginnings. You know what? I never told you, Claire said over dessert. That night at the restaurant when I called Vanessa out, I was terrified. I thought I might be making a huge mistake, destroying a friendship, causing unnecessary drama. Why did you do it then, Claire? I asked. Because it was the right thing to do, she said simply. And because I saw what she was turning into, and I didn't want to be someone who stood by and let it happen. Also, honestly, because you deserve better. We both did, I said. Later that night, sitting on the porch of our house, I thought about that version of me from 3 years ago. The guy had sat through dinner while his wife humiliated him. The guy had discovered betrayal and almost let it break him. The guy had learned that sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to play by someone else's rules. ID rebuilt everything Vanessa tried to destroy. But more than that, ID built something new, something better, something honest. Vanessa had been wrong about me in every possible way. I wasn't boring. I wasn't weak. I wasn't someone who could be used and discarded. I was someone who protected what was mine, who fought smart instead of loud, who understood that revenge wasn't about making someone suffer, but about building a life so good that their absence became irrelevant. 4 years later, I proposed to Claire at that same barbecue place where we'd had our first real date. Nothing fancy, no public spectacle, just me getting down on one knee between the brisket and the coleslaw and asking if she wanted to make this permanent. She said yes before I finished the sentence. We got married at a small ceremony on our property, just family and close friends, no drama, no games, no hidden agendas. My vows were simple. I promised to always be honest with you, to respect you, to build something real with you. Claire's vows were even simpler. I promised the same, and I promised never to mock you at overpriced restaurants. Everyone laughed. We kissed. Life moved forward. I heard Vanessa got married too eventually. Some guy from Dallas, an accountant or something equally mundane. I saw the announcement on Facebook. One of those moments where you stumble across an ex's life update and feel nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no lingering bitterness, just a vague sense of good for her before scrolling past to something more interesting. That's how I knew ID won. Not because I destroyed her life, or because she'd ended up worse off. ID won because her existence no longer mattered to me. She'd become a story I told at dinners when people asked how I met Claire. A cautionary tale about trusting the wrong person. A chapter in my history that was closed and locked and gathering dust. Claire and I built a life that Vanessa never could have imagined. We traveled not to prove anything to anyone, but because we wanted to see the world together. We bought a lake house where we spent weekends fishing and reading and being quiet together. We hosted barbecues for friends and family. The kind of casual gatherings where people felt welcome and comfortable. Not the performative events Vanessa used to stage for social media. My business continued to thrive. I promoted loyal employees, hired people who shared my values, built a company culture based on respect and fairness. I became known in Austin business circles not as the guy whose wife betrayed him, but as someone who ran a tight ship and treated people right. The scandal faded into background noise, replaced by actual accomplishments. Claire's law practice grew, too. She developed a reputation for being fierce but fair, the kind of lawyer who actually returned phone calls and explained things in plain English. We became that couple other people envied, not because we had money or status, but because we genuinely liked each other, supported each other, built each other up instead of tearing each other down. 6 years after that dinner at Copper Hill, I got a message on LinkedIn. It was from Vanessa. My first instinct was to delete it without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. Nathan, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I understand why. I'm not asking for anything or expecting anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm in therapy now, working through a lot of things, and my therapist suggested I make amends to people I've hurt. You're at the top of that list. What I did to you was unforgivable. I destroyed something good because I couldn't see its value. I let ambition and selfishness turn me into someone cruel. I can't take any of it back, but I want you to know that I see it now. I see what I lost and what I threw away. I see the life you've built with Claire, and am genuinely happy for you both. You deserved better than what I gave you, and I'm glad you found it. I hope you're happy. I hope you've forgiven me. Not for my sake, but for yours. Because holding on to anger only hurts the person carrying it. I won't contact you again. This is goodbye. Take care of yourself. I read that message 3 times, sitting in my home office while Claire made dinner in the kitchen. I could hear her humming, the sound of pots and pans, the normal domestic soundtrack of a life well lived. I thought about responding, about telling Vanessa that I had forgiven her, that the anger had faded years ago, but then I realized that responding would give her something she didn't deserve, closure on her terms. I deleted the message and went to help Claire with dinner. That was 9 years ago now. I'm 44. Claire's 41. We have 2 kids, a boy and a girl, who are the best parts of both of us. My daughter has Claire's sharp wit. My son has my strategic mind. We're teaching them to be good people, to value honesty over cleverness, to understand that how you treat people matters more than what you can get from them. Sometimes late at night, I think about that dinner at Copper Hill, not with regret or anger, but with something like gratitude. Vanessa's betrayal taught me who I really was. It taught me that I could be ruthless when necessary, strategic when required, and still maintain my integrity. It taught me that strength isn't about never being hurt, but about how you respond when someone tries to destroy you. I learned that the best revenge isn't making someone suffer. The best revenge is building a life so good, so full, so genuinely happy that their attempt to hurt you becomes the catalyst for your greatness. Vanessa tried to break me, and instead she freed me. She tried to take everything. and instead she gave me the opportunity to build something better. Claire and I still go to that barbecue place for anniversaries. It's become our tradition, our reminder of where we started. We sit in the same booth, order the same food, and laugh about how lucky we both are to have found each other in the wreckage of Vanessa's manipulation. My business is worth 12 times what it was when I divorced Vanessa. I've got warehouses in 7 states, contracts with major retailers, a reputation that opens doors. But none of that matters as much as coming home to a wife who doesn't need to diminish me to feel powerful, to kids who respect rather than fear me, to a life built on truth instead of lies. I saw Vanessa one last time completely by chance at a gas station outside Fort Worth about 4 years ago. I was filling up my truck on a road trip with the family. She was pumping gas into a minivan, looking tired but content. Our eyes met. She gave me a small nod. I nodded back. That was it. No words, no drama. Just two people whose lives had intersected catastrophically and then diverged forever. I got back in my truck where Claire was reading a book and the kids were arguing about what music to play. My family, my real life, everything Vanessa had tried to destroy and couldn't. I started the engine and pulled back onto the highway, heading toward wherever we were going, leaving the past behind where it belonged. That's the end of today's story. If you haven't yet, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments. We read them all. And thanks for watching. You're always welcome here.